We have an exciting session waiting ahead where we will talking about the importance of social ventures and how their innovative ideas can lead to social impact and sustainable growth. The Sustainable Growth Through Social Innovation session will be moderated by Professor Il Im, a professor at the School of Business here at Yonsei University. Please welcome him on the stage.
안녕하십니까. 네, 반갑습니다. 저는 연세대학교 경영대학 교수이면서 연세대학교 BK 교육연구단 단장을 맡고 있는
and I am the head of the BK21
저희 이번 사회적 혁신을 통한 지속 가능한
University.
성장 세션에 오신 여러분들
I'd like to
환영합니다.
welcome you to our session on sustainable growth
잘
through social
아시다시피
innovations.
지속 가능한 발전의
As you
핵심
know
목표
well,
중에서
one of the key
지속
goals
가능한
of
성장이 굉장히
SDGs
중요합니다.
is
그래서
sustainable
지속
growth.
가능한 성장의
And so,
주요 영역으로 이 세션에서는
In this session,
사회적
we're going to
혁신에
look at
주목을 하고
the
이미
role
소셜
of
벤처
social
활동을 계시는
innovation, which will
분들하고 벤처
allow
캐피탈리스트
sustainable
분들을
growth.
모셔서
We have
얘기를
venture
나눠보도록
capitalists
하겠습니다.
as well as
이런
innovators in
사회적
our
혁신은
society and to listen to their experience.
엔터프러너십의 동력으로서 연세대학교
Social
경영대학
innovation
저희
is
BK
driven by
교육연구단에서도 굉장히
entrepreneurship,
중요한
and the Yonsei
목표로서 추진을 하고
University's
있습니다. 그래서 그런
BK21
면에서 제
group is
개인적으로도
also
이번 세션이 굉장히
working
의미가 있고
towards this goal. So
중요하다고
personally
생각을
for
합니다.
me, I feel this session is very
자, 그러면
meaningful
먼저
and timely.
참가하시는 분들
So
소개를
I'd like to
드리도록
begin with an
하겠습니다.
introduction of our
제가 있는
panelists.
곳에서 가까운 거리 순서대로
So I will
소개를
begin with the
드리자면
person on my
우선
left.
소셜벤처
First,
수퍼빈의 김정빈
from
대표님
Supung Ventures,
나오셨습니다.
we have CEO 상엽. Excuse me. From Superbin, we have CEO
그리고
정빈 Kim.
이큐브랩의
And from eCube Labs,
권순범 대표님
we
나오셨습니다.
have CEO Sunbom Kwon.
그리고 벤처 캐피탈리스트
And venture
두 분이
capitalist,
나오셨는데요.
we have two.
인비저닝의 김용현
First,
대표님
we have
나오셨습니다.
from Envisioning Partners, Managing Partner Yonghyun Kim.
그리고 소풍의
And from
한상엽 대표님
Sopung
나오셨습니다.
Ventures, we have CEO 상엽 한.
그리고 토론자로서
And as a
경영대학의 곽지영
discussant,
교수님
we have
나오셨습니다.
Professor Chu-young Kwak of School of Business at
자,
Yonsei
그럼
University.
우선 소셜 벤처가
So,
어떤 사업을 하는지 먼저 듣고
Let's listen to what
시작을 하는 게 좋을 것
social
같습니다.
ventures do.
우선
What is the work that
김정빈
they're doing?
대표님께서
So I'd like to
슈퍼빈이
invite the
추진하는 사회적
CEO
혁신을 좀 소개해
정빈
주시고
Kim
어떻게
and
슈퍼빈이
his
자리를 잡게
example of a
됐는지 말씀을
Superbin's
부탁드리겠습니다.
activities.
여기 옆에 그거 좀 주세요. 네, 안녕하십니까. 슈퍼빈의
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kim Jung-bin. I'm the CEO of Superbin.
간략한 소개를 통해서
Let me briefly introduce our company to you, and hopefully that will try to show you the kinds of social innovation that we want to bring about and the business model that we have in mind. Superbin
수상을 하지는 못했지만 그 환경 노벨상이라고 불리는
was a nominee for the Earthshot Prize last year. It's called the Nobel Prize for the Environment. We were the first Korean company to be nominated for this because we focus on an actual case example of a circular economy using waste. And that was actually one of the themes whereby we received the nomination. Just briefly, we talk about social innovation, talk about climate crisis and biodiversity, preservation. These are obviously very important as well. And this is a little bit different from the older generation because for us and for the future generation, this is really directly related to our own lives, to our own survival. Of this, after the Industrial Revolution, we thought that this prosperity and convenience would last forever and expand forever. And one of those side effects of that is the amount of trash, and the social problems coming from trash are continuing to grow. The world is trying to become more carbon zero, and from that perspective, We know that the current social structure on consumption and production would not be feasible for us to go towards a carbon zero society. It is not going to be enough, and there is this need for a huge change. And if we do not accept this change, then we can never go to a carbon zero society. Around the world, after the Industrial Revolution, we've seen the economy become a linear economy and to become a carbon zero economy. Many companies that are focusing on ESG, but government's regulations and even consumers' decision-making should all change to be in keeping with the recycling economy and then a circular economy. There are many different important case examples, but these are not necessarily brought about by laws and regulations, but in fact, in many cases, companies, business moves first. Of the many videos that you can see on YouTube, you would see that shoes are not easily recycled, but a global brand came up with this video. It's a 30-second video.
I guess we talk about this internally as the beginning of the end of waste.
This is the only shoe I know that you can put in a grinding machine and then you get the chance to be able to apply it back into another shoe.
We're putting ourselves out there, we're being vulnerable. We don't have all the answers, but we can't wait for all the answers to unveil themselves.
This could be the most disruptive product in the world, and everything should be built like this in the future.
If we get off of plastic waste, then we win. We all win.
그러니까 이렇게 보시는 것처럼 이제
So as you've just seen,
F&B 사업의 여러 가지
even in F&B business, global brands that come up with packaging for their F&B products and consumer product packaging. These companies have been producing and wasting, focusing on linear economy, but they are trying to transition to a circular economy. And in fact, the government's regulations and social infrastructure are actually transitioning to try to support this after the fact. So we're seeing a huge paradigm shift in civilization. And it's important for us to focus on this. As a social venture, we believe that through social innovation, this is an important point for us in considering our business model going forward. And that is why, as a social venture entrepreneur, we try to ask ourselves, this circular economy, what exactly is going to be the difference in the recycling in circular economy? How is it different from recycling in a linear economy? In a linear economy, you look at the waste and collect and sort the waste and try to make use of the waste that you can recycle. In a circular economy, we try to make sure that the products that have been produced will lead to changes in the behavior and decision-making process. This means that the products that are actually made can later, after consumption, be put to use again. This means that we need to come up with a new concept of recycling and a new social concept and a new concept of industrial specifications focusing on this. And all this, Superbin thought that although the waste recycling that is currently done, the majority of it is in the linear economy, that there is still something that we can do in the circular economy, and we try to identify the different spots in the value chain so that some of the plastics can go to GS Caltex, Lotte Chemical, or SK, that they can maybe purchase our waste plastics to make use in petrochemical. If we can do that, then perhaps this is some measure of a circular economy that we can put waste plastics to use. Now, to do so, the collection and sorting process is not just about collecting and sorting recyclables and recyclables and waste, but try to identify the industrial specifications that the industry needs, and based on this analysis that is digitally done, we can collect and sort. And this is done by communicating between man and machine. We can provide a selling platform to the market, and companies who are willing to pay for these waste plastics can purchase them from people who are willing to sell them for a profit to these companies. So this is a way for us to actually contribute to the circular economy. And secondly, for all of these different recyclables that are actually collected, if this can be included in the circular loop, we have to make sure that there is another level of a logistics network where there is no contamination. And that is why we receive capital funding for venture capitalists to try to create a network of warehouses where we can collect and sort and make sure there's no contamination. And lastly, to make sure that this can be appealing to the industry, what we created was the smart factory in Hwaseong, about 4,500 pyong space waste processing facility that is currently operational. And the robots that would collect the waste and recycles would be processed in this facility to be turned into industrial goods and chemical products that they can even be globally exported. And we can expand from here. We can establish joint ventures with chemical companies so that we can create chemical products making use of the waste materials. So we are continuing to expand our business, and once this becomes more established, becomes more solid, then perhaps in the future we can sell carbon credits. And the carbon emissions decrease that we are engaging in are actually currently being quantified by a third company. We believe that waste materials can go beyond simply being recycled, that they can actually be used by industry as a raw material. We believe that there's going to be some changes in the industry as the value chain grows. We are currently in the process of making and building this. This is something that the different investors that were interested in us, they are looking at different companies to invest in as well that are in the same line of work. And ultimately, this would contribute to biodiversity, a kind of a social content. And ultimately, we were evaluated as a company that has the potential to contribute to a social value. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. You said that we can go beyond just simply collecting and sorting recycling trash, but that we can even use them to create the social value.
Next, let's listen to the example of eCube Labs. And eCube Labs CEO Sun Bum-kwon was a student at Yonsei University when he began this startup. And so, please welcome the CEO of eCube Labs, Sun Bum-kwon, and listen to his example. Hello, it's nice to meet you. I am Kwon Sun-bum of eCube Labs. Social ventures work not just in the waste field. However, eCube Labs also works in the waste industry. So you will be hearing that word waste or trash a lot today. And many people are putting in a lot of effort to address the sustainable development or sustainable growth issue through social innovation. And I'd like to share with you a different perspective. So why was it that I was still a student at university when I came up with this idea? Let me begin with that story. When you say waste collection, even with very fast technological changes, this is an area or industry that still is a late follower. In the front line of the waste collection, there has not been much change, not much application of technological development so far. So wherever you are in the world, even with different types of attempts made, the situation was still very similar. And so I do have this very elaborate slide here, but I began with a very small project on using solar PVs, solar energy, in order to operate these waste bins and how they can be connected to the waste collection process. And so with the municipalities and the private sector waste collector companies, how can we collaborate to ensure smooth flow of service? So that was the beginning, the idea that I had. But as you just heard, I was a student at university. I was in my junior years, and I did not begin this work as a business. Now, like any other college student, I used to just hang around with my friends, but every time we pass by the Sinchon area, you would remember also, if you're a college student, but these trash bins would overflow with trash. So the principle of the broken window would apply here. So once these trash bins overflowed, then all of the trashes would pile up across and around the trash bins. So I began with this very small task, very narrow focused issue. So I borrowed a warehouse during my summer break, and with my friends, we used to drink a lot, but now we were trying to do this begin the startup on waste bins, trash collecting bins. So first of all, we began this work as a part of a fun experience. Have you ever experienced or seen the overflow of waste in your homes or in the streets? Well, most of the time, if the trash is about to overflow, a lot of the people in their homes would just ensure that that doesn't happen. However, in the streets, that's not the case. People would not care whether trash bins would overflow in the streets or not. And so I thought that we could use some kind of technology to install a compactor within the trash bins to ensure that the trash would not overflow. So that was a very fun experience, the fact that we were working hands-on to introduce this new idea and technology. And as a social venture, I mean, we began our work. So we began this work because we wanted to have fun with it. However, we found out that this kind of effort was actually quite helpful to society. And so we decided to continue on with this work. We conducted market research and how we can deliver more value to the customers and to society. We received a lot of good feedback. And so as we were doing this work, we realized that there are not many opportunities or marketing opportunities here in Korea. And so the policy is to install these trash compactors to reduce the amount of trash. However, the main policy in Korea is to reduce the absolute amount of trash. And so we decided to go overseas, and we receive a lot of assistance for global expansion. And particularly for countries with wide areas, with high wage rate, these trash compactors would be more popular in the particularly Western countries. The projects first was well received and when it first began. And so this trash compactor business is in its 12th year now. If you go to Everland in Korea, you would see these trash compactors, but in the regular streets, you would not find them quite often. So we conducted a lot of different the project in different countries, different cities. However, we focused mostly in areas with high social costs in installing these compactors. But we have been faced with some limitations. We did 300 cities, And what we realize is that the issue of trash is a global issue. However, in India, China, and the US, if we don't go into these markets, then our efforts will not be very meaningful because they are the highest trash emitters. So these three countries produce 40% of global trash. And so for our work to be really meaningful, we decided that we needed to go into these markets. And we tapped the possibilities. However, for China, they have a very centralized economic system, so it was difficult for us to go there. In the case of India, they place less priority on handling trash. And so we decided that the US is an advanced country, yes, but our business had, or our solution had great potential in the US. And so from 4 or 5 years ago, we have been focusing more on the US market. So this is an optimal solution for the US market. But of course, we had to do some pivoting and some tweaking to our business. And I will share with you a short video and explain to you how we tried to apply this to the US market. Can we have the video, please?
Because waste is normally collected on a set schedule, waste bins are likely to be either overflowing or partially full. Our sensors send the bin's fill levels to the customer's smart device. And then they can send collection requests to haulers. Haulers can then bid on requests for service, allowing customers to select the lowest price. Once the bid is accepted, haulers can update their drivers' routes during their collection operation. Drivers receive updated routes in real time and have their GPS navigation adjusted automatically. Customers save money and haulers gain more business along their routes. Everybody wins.
So that was a very brief video about the past 10 years of work that we're doing. So this is an optimal solution for the US, and ultimately the trash market, you realize that the size of the commercial or industrial trash industry is much bigger. In the US, they have what are called the dumpsters, huge trash collection sites, and each store, each restaurant, each shop decide from which trash company they will be receiving the trash collection service. So they have a private trash collection market or industry that's been formed in the US. So the US has in the US waste collection market, it's the private companies that dominate. And so we decided that our technology, our service will be most impactful in the US. And so we developed this model further to apply to the US. And we did some market analysis, and we did analysis of our competitors. So we said that the sensors would sense when these trash will be collected. So the bins would be full, and then the sensors would tell us that we will be collecting them. And so the trash collection cost would go down as a result. And then we also would receive the bidding from the private companies, trash collector companies that would participate in our bidding process and offer the best price. And so the shops can pay the lowest price for their trash collection. And so that's the type of business model that we developed for the US market. And so the existing customers No, they were paying a hefty price for trash collection because there were three dominant players in the market. They would pay $300 to $400 on average. And if you look at the characteristics of these three dominant players, they were actually very profitable. They had about operating profit level of 16 to 17%. And so this was obviously a traditional industry that continued to grow. So that was the question that we had in mind. What is the secret behind their continuous growth? And one reason for their continuous growth was that they are listed companies, and so the shareholders are actually quite similar. So the top three, their market share would be 60% combined. And if you look at the shareholders, they were quite similar, so there was no overlapping competition among them, which ensured that the market size to continue to grow over the years. So this was like almost a monopoly in the market, and so for the smaller trash collection companies, there was no room for them to maneuver, no opportunity for them to go into this market and expand their share. But trash collection, well, you can look at it from two different perspectives. For the waste generators, they just want the service to be affordable. They don't want it to be too expensive. And in that process, of course, the social costs can be reduced when these waste generators who want a cheaper service are connected to the waste haulers who can offer the service at a lower cost. And so we were really looking into how we could enable that connection to happen. And so we call ourselves a brokerage platform. So the customers think that we, eCube, is the trash collectors because they put their trash in our bins. However, for the small waste collectors, the small players, it's actually these companies that are collecting the trash. And so we are expanding in the market based on the branding that we are a cooperative of small waste collectors. And in fact, the biggest shareholder in this market is Bill Gates. And so we are competing against Bill Gates in this North American market. And it's been about a year and a half since we began this service. We're doing business mostly in Texas. We have about 3,500 customers right now. And the number of customers continues to grow, which is quite encouraging. And so we used to provide solutions to the trash collectors, the trash haulers over the past 10 years. And the impact that we created as a result was quite slow and very small because even without using our technology, this was already a very profitable business. So there was no incentive for them to introduce our technology. And so we decided that we have to expand our role to play a more direct role in trash collection. That's why we applied this business model in the US market. So this shows you the increase in our monthly number of Haola customers. And the red line is the accumulated number. So this is our IR deck. So it contains a lot of information, and I didn't know what the audience would be like today, so I put in a lot of different slides. But anyhow, this is my last slide, and what we're really thinking of right now for the future is that, well, for the big companies, they have their own systems to reduce their costs in providing trash collection services, so they have their own management system. But for us, for the smaller trash haulers whom we work with, For them, they don't have a good sophisticated management tools. And so we want to provide a quality back office system to our haulers and to share in this customer to ensure that even the small companies can offer high quality trash collection service to their customers. And another issue that we are looking into is, aside from the software issues, again, we used to do a business on trash collector or trash compactor. So we are looking into the hardware side of our business as well. And the autonomous driving will also greatly affect the logistics industry. Trash collection also is a part of the logistics industry. So you're not going from point A to B in a single line. You have to stop by different points along that trash collection route in our industry. And so even with autonomous driving technology provided, it's difficult for our industry players to utilize that technology. So what we're trying to do right now is that the autonomous vehicle would take the car to the nearby trash collection sites, and we will also provide an autonomous station role for continuous flow of the trash collection from point A to point B to point C and onward. So these kinds of hardware R&D work is another important pillar in the business that we are doing right now. So 100 years ago and today, the frontline trash collection industry is quite similar. However, it is not fully utilizing the latest technology that have been developed. And so we want to try to apply these high-tech in the front line to ensure that there is a huge social impact and the benefit provided to society. So those are the attempts and the works that we are doing at eCube. So the social aspect of the work that we are doing, which we can share with you, is that rather than the restaurants, if people listen to our model, they often think about the restaurants as our leading customers. However, it's the motor customers, which will be the automobile repair shops. For the auto customers, they just throw away the tires, used tires, in the trash bins. But oftentimes these tires, they are rejected from the trash dumping sites. And so we are trying to introduce the technology of shredding these tires. So we're going to try to operate a waste tire shredding center. But the tires that were produced was too much. And so we decided that the shredded tires, we should find a way to sell those. And that would ensure that the customers would not have to throw away these waste tires. And so we are planning to run these tire centers from this year. And then anything that's profitable, I mean, if you want to have a profitable business, we have to have these kinds of centers established in each of the different local communities. So we can begin with the tires and then go on to find ways to recycle waste, batteries, and other components from cars. And so the US recycling rate is something that we can enhance through our business model. And so similarly in Korea also, it's important for us to try to introduce these kinds of changes. And wherever we are doing business, whether in Korea or in the US, we feel that these efforts would come together to create bigger social impacts on a global scale. So these are kinds of work. This is the kind of work that we are doing, and I think that is it for me. I apologize if I sounded like I was giving an IR presentation, but anyhow, ultimately, social issues can be resolved depending on the type of approach that you take. And so I believe that eCube is doing okay. we are finding ways for business survival, and when we continue on with these efforts, ultimately, these efforts will contribute in one way or another to social innovation and sustainable development. So we are in a learning process as a company. Thank you very much for your attention.
감사합니다.
Yes, thank you.
이상으로 소셜 벤처 공동의 소셜
With this, we
벤처 인사 얘기를
would
들어봤고요.
complete
토론을 좀
the presentations on
하도록
social venture
하겠습니다.
companies and now move on to the discussion session. I think that social venture is unique, and because its ultimate purpose is to create social value, social venture companies are also corporations, and so they have to create corporate value as well.
기업의 가치는 벤처 캐피탈리스트 분들이 가장 잘 알고
And of course,
계실 텐데요.
venture capitalists would know best on how to evaluate corporate value. So now we'd like to ask the experts here on valuation of social venture companies and what are the characteristics that social venture companies have to look at going forward. Now we'd like to turn to Kim Yong-hyun of Envisioning Partners. Rather than providing a direct answer right away, I think that I can provide you with an overview of the kind of company that we are. So we provided an overview of our company. Venture capital engages in various different strategies. There are many companies that use and employ different strategies, so I don't think that we can lump them all together. When you look at venture capital companies, you have to look at their individual vision and strategy, which stage they are in. And you have to differentiate that before you make the investment decision. In that sense, we are a venture capital company that invests in impact companies. This means that the startups that we invest in are working to solve environmental and social issues, while at the same time addressing a large enough addressable market so that they can create decent market return. We look at the companies, particularly the founders, with great vision. So we support the founders and their vision. And that is the kind of work that we do. In the case of our company, we were established about 5 years ago. Currently, if we look at impact venture fund, I think that there may be about 3 or 4 impact venture funds operating in Korea. 5 years ago, Yellow Duck became the first player, and Yellow Dog. And since then, we have invested in 39 companies with an AUM of about $140 million.
저희 같은 경우는 임팩트 애셋이라는 평가하는 기관에서 그래도 제가 알기로는 한국사회에도 선정된 임팩트 쪽에 투자하는 벤처 캐피탈 운영사
one of the few impact investment companies, and we were selected as such in 2022. So I think that I'm going back and forth in my slide, but in any case, what exactly does impact investing mean? We look at the business model of the company and the amount of impact that is made. We look at those companies that allow for those two to happen together. Of course, all companies can provide good benefits, but we are looking at companies where the benefits that are derived are not a side benefit, but that the impact is actually something that is a main benefit that the company provides along with the bottom line. And that is what the emphasis is as we invest in these companies. This means that in discovering these startups and business opportunities, we look at the environmental and social lens and use that by which to kind of narrow down on early identification of startups that we can invest in. And we try to look at those companies that take on the grand, big challenges in the environment and society. So we think that that's good business. So we definitely do not ignore market return, although is not the only focus that we have. We are focusing on 4 different things: climate solutions, health and wellness, quality education, the future of work. And this is a list of our portfolio companies. As you can see, there are many companies in climate solutions. I don't think we have a lot of time, so I'm going to talk quickly. In any case, for any operating partner or any company, the team is very important. Our team is the same team 5 years ago. Choi Hyun-ju is the co-CEO, and in impact investment, CEO Choi is well known. Hyun-ju and I worked at the private equity firm Carlyle about 10 years ago. We worked together for about 6.5 years. So in my case, I joined Envisioning Partners last year as co-CEO. And as an impact venture fund, what else is significant is that there are 3 partners and 2 of them are women. So as you can see, majority of our leadership is female. So that is something that we believe is quite significant for a venture fund. So with that, I briefly introduced our company to you. Thank you very much.
Next, CEO Sang Hyop-han from Sopung Ventures. Good afternoon. I'm working at Sopung Ventures right now. And similar to Envisioning Partners, we are trying to use business to resolve social issues through our work. The differentiating factor was that we are focusing on the early stage startup. So every year we invest in 30 to 40 early startups, and our average investment amount is about 200 million won. And our mother company is, 2008. We first began in 2008 as SOPNG was our beginning company. And basically, when we talk about social ventures, of course, I previously had started a social venture. I'm continuing to do this work, but the criteria of a social venture, as opposed to the other general ventures, I feel, they have more similarities than differences. But anyhow, when we try to assess or to understand the social ventures, what are the criteria or characteristics? What are the differentiating factors that we need to understand? So let me talk about that briefly. As far as what I have experienced on the field goes, the motivation behind the startup would be very important. Most startups begin with the intention of resolving a specific problem or issue. So some startup people, they may focus on profitability. Others, they may be focusing on the socially vulnerable people or the environment to solve the related problems. So you may think that there is a strong or very clear differentiation. However, the focus oftentimes for social ventures tends to fall heavily on the social values. And so I believe that the motivation should not be used as the only criteria to define a social venture. And so what is the genuine intention? I mean, yes, that's important. However, what is the type of problem or issue that you are trying to resolve? And can you address this in your specific, very unique approach or manner? And how much alignment do you have personally with your company goals or values? And how are you trying to assess or measure the results? So those are some of the questions that we ask to the entrepreneurs. Are you a social venture, businessman, or a regular entrepreneur? And then we also ask, what is the specific issue that you're trying to address? How is that connected to your core business? And what are the KPIs that you plan to utilize to assess results? But in actual decision-making process with regard to investment, the business models or the assessment from the market would be more important. How well it is received in the market. So compared to other issues, is this specific issue of the startup, can this be addressed in a big enough scale, or can it be resolved through existing service or technology in the market? So those are some of the criteria that we look into. And aside from this, in terms of the need for expertise or implementation capabilities, the problem-solving skills necessary, these social ventures have more similarities than differences when compared to the regular businesses. So the second question I'd like to ask is connected to the earlier question. A social venture, I mean, their business model will be very important. And so social plus venture are the two goals that social ventures have to pursue. And what would be important in their business models? And compared to other regular ventures, how is their business model different? So we don't have much time remaining. I'd like to ask Jung-bin Kim of Superbin to answer this question. And from the venture side, I'd like to ask Mr. Yong-hyun Kim for the answer.
When we think about social venture, I think Mr. Han talked about something that's very important. So it's basically a venture. The way that a social venture creates business value and the way that a venture company creates business model is not different. It's just that they're both selling their business model in the capitalist market, and this business model, if it's good enough to solve a pain point in the market, then they can be rewarded. So for example, maybe there's a good social venture company can become a vendor to Samsung Electronics, and maybe they create sensors that is really great and they sell it to Samsung. That's a great pain point reliever for Samsung. So these are maybe some companies that can solve an efficiency problem or an effectiveness problem. But we're really looking at social venture, but for social venture, they look at societal problems. These are social problems that maybe the governments cannot solve, and some individual companies cannot identify. So the social venture company would zero in on that social problem, that social pain point, and then maybe try to come up with a business model to solve that pain point, and that business model would be rated at the market, and the market would decide whether to sell, whether to buy or purchase this product. So this, if they see that this is a great enough pain point reliever, then the business model will be seen as feasible. If the business model is not viable, if there is a error in this hypothesis, then the company would have to pivot their business model or evolve. This is something that Mr. Han mentioned, and this is where a social venture company, the founder's vision on defining the social pain main point in coming up with a great business model as a product or service to sell to the market and competing with other venture companies in the market to sell this product. That's how the business model is made. Yes, I agree with that as well. When we say social venture, the social venture company's business model I don't think is necessarily different. It's just that the issue that they want to solve touches upon an environmental or social issue. It's not that they are coming up with some kind of drastic solution, or there needs to be a certain founder or team, or looking at a certain market. I think that those are same with other venture companies. But what I want to add to this is that the investor's rate of return might be a little bit different. So for example, as I mentioned before, because we're a venture investor, we want to create at least market return. So that we can provide that level of return to the investors who invest in us. And because this is funding that we receive from our investors, and we have the fiduciary duty to manage those assets, and so we are obligated to provide some level of return to our investors. So for venture investment or for startup investment, we can invest in maybe a portfolio of about 10, 12 companies, and maybe 5-10 years down the road, this could lead to a 3-fold or 5-fold growth of capital return. On the other hand, there are some companies that have deliberately decided to go for lower rate of return. Maybe they say that we just want to protect our original investment, but we still want to invest in those ESG companies that can create value, as long as they get the principal back. But what is important is that most venture companies, they target a rate of return that is on par with the market level. And so that means that social venture companies also have to focus and target a large enough addressable market. And it's not something that we look at in the short term, maybe 2 or 3 years, but maybe 5 years or more down the road. Hopefully, that there is room for growth and room for improvement for these companies. In that sense, it's not just enough for us to look at the local market here in domestic Korea. But what is interesting listening to the presenters is that they all started local, but ultimately, because these are ESG related issues that are global in scope, they have that vision to go global later on. I thought it was interesting to hear that, because that is a very important point. So I think that social venture companies also have to look at a large enough addressable market.
Thank you very much for your insight. We looked at social venture and the opinions from those who are working in the field of social ventures. The academia also is very much interested in social ventures. And so to Professor Kwak, I would like to ask you to share the academic perspective on social ventures, their role, their activities.
네, 안녕하세요. 곽주영입니다.
Yes, hello, I'm Kwak Ju-young. I am a GEEF programmer, and I also program some of the other sessions, not just this one, but I have to say that I'm very much attached to this session, which is why I came here to provide some contribution to this session. Because we are in the Department of Business, we talk about open innovation and global management, etc. But over the past year, in some of the columns that are written for a newspaper, some of my colleagues have said that they really resonated with one idea, which is that most venture companies, most startups have this technological excellence, and they bring something to the table, and that's what leads them to success. But for social venture companies, they look at the social need and try to find a solution to fix that need. And so they try to, instead of coming up with something new, they optimize existing technology and existing tools to try to create success. I thought that that was quite meaningful, and this is what many colleagues said was very important. So there's that business need and social impact. If we are talking about a big company, so like market leaders, their routine, and they can continue to maintain or expand this routine with their existing products and services. So even if they see a social need, they cannot be the mover and be the actor in trying to address that need because they're already established in the market. So to address this need, perhaps the startups that can provide a more bottom-up approach would be best suited to fix this problem. As Mr. Kwon said that he has been working on this since his undergraduate days, it really comes down to how these venture companies would survive in the capitalist market. We do have many students here. There are many students at our business school that are interested in social venture. They're studying it. They want to be in social venture companies. And also, this video is going to be on YouTube for everyone to see. We do have an excellent panel here with us today, and for many people who are dreaming of working in social venture companies or becoming social venture entrepreneurs, perhaps this could lead to the second or the third 소풍, Envisioning Partners, Superbin, and EQ Labs, and etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kwok. There are many more things that we could discuss, but in the interest of time, I'd like to make a short request to our attendees. So the next session is the Social Venture of Yonsei University session, and so we hope that you will participate in the next session as well. And as you heard from Professor Kwok, this session will be uploaded on YouTube as well, and so we hope that will be helpful to you. So I'd like to ask the panelists here to, if there's any advice that you'd like to give to the young students, please go ahead.
So because I sit next to you, I think that I'm going first. Unlike our parents' generation, you are living in an era where startups can actually change the world. This is an excellent climate for you to start your own companies. And we do have some investors here, but we are living in a capitalist society. This means that starting a company is the most important and most valuable challenge that we can engage in. You can really create an influence, and you can make connections in a capitalist society. It's like a fine art, really. But for many people who are trying to focus, maybe interested in creating a social value, I can tell you that this is incredibly difficult, more than what you can imagine. So you really have to understand why you're getting into this and know that very well, because that is going to keep you keeping on when things get tough. Thank you very much.
I also will be brief. I started my company when I was in college, and so I was an undergrad for 10 years, and I also graduated from a commercial high school as well. But anyhow, if you are planning to start your company during college years or right after graduation, I think, well, that intention reminds me of my past experience, and there are some things that I'd like to share with you. Starting a company when you're a student, I don't think there is a clear-cut answer to whether this is the right way to go or not. And added to that is the fact that you are interested in social venture startups, which is a bit concerning also for me. So yes, indeed, it's a very fulfilling experience, a fun and worthwhile experience. But I think, of course, there's going to be ups and downs, pros and cons. However, I believe that there are more benefits that you can gain from this experience. So when you are a student, I think that is when you are the freest to do these things that you want to do. You don't have dependents that you have to support. And so I think that's when you're in college, that's a good time for you to be starting these kinds of businesses. So I think that kind of contextual benefit is certainly something that you should try to utilize. And whether it's social ventures or any type of ventures, in a capitalist market, you need to have a good business model to receive recognition and be successful or have continuity in your business. So just because you're a student doesn't mean that they will cut you slack in the market. And so you have to have a strong business plan for you to be successful, because the assessment from the market will be very strict. And so I think you need to find a balance. You can't be focused too much on the social aspect, because you needed to continue your business to have a sustainable impact on society. And so you may begin with as a social venture. You may focus more initially on the social aspect, but at the same time, there comes a time when you need to focus on the business logic more. And so I think you need to have an understanding of the importance of both sides. So don't expect that everything will be rosy down the road. So you have to remember that you're going into a capitalist market and that you will be faced with many challenges. But I do want to root you on in your endeavors.
So the most important thing is that you have to find that thing that sparks passion in your life. Once you have found that thing, I think you really have to dream big. Take this issue and try to solve it not just in the community that you're in, but maybe something that you can create value for the rest of the world. Try to create a company that dreams big and maybe can change the lives of people around the world. And another thing is that in your work, there's going to be so many unpredictable challenges. So you have to be humble, try to learn, and try to adjust and adapt, and also, if necessary, prepare to pivot. That's what I would like to leave you with. Thank you.
I'd like to share with you three things. First, I am running a venture investment company, but I don't necessarily encourage starting a business because the failure rate is quite high. So only 1 out of 100 businesses, new startups, succeed. And so I think you have to begin with a question: do I really need to start my own company to resolve this specific issue? You have to ask that question to yourself. And the startup people, well, they really have a mind of their own. So do you have that kind of a mindset? That's a question you need to begin with. And whether you're called social venture or not, does it have to be? Does your company have to be a social venture? I mean, the fact that you're trying to resolve social issues, but it's going to cause you a lot of internal conflict, internal dilemma. But just remember that these kinds of dilemma is a natural process in running a social ventures. We believe that we can realize social values by doing successful business. That's why this is the work that we are doing. Sometimes we have to emphasize the economic benefit more, sometimes the social impact more. So there's always going to be a conflict between the two. So that's a given which you need to accept. And lastly, there's a
풀리지 않아서 문제로
endless
남는
list of
거잖아요.
issues and problems that we are faced with in our society. So there's been so many people who try to solve these issues, but they continue to remain as problems. And so this means that you have to exert a huge amount of resource, time, and energy. Almost everything that I have, you have to invest in order to resolve these unresolved problems. So that's the third aspect that you need to consider. So we do seed investments, and if you say yes to all three questions, then please contact us.
So I don't have anything much to say, but as I mentioned before, we were able to invite these very busy leaders here today. So I hope that you can take away much from this, and I hope that this was a valuable opportunity, and I would like to thank all the panelists as well.
네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank
오늘
you.
세션은 사회적 혁신을 통한 지속 가능한 성장이라는
That was our session on sustainable growth through social innovation. That was a very meaningful session on very significant theme. I would like to thank our panelists and, of course, our audience. With that, we close this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Im and the distinguished panels. As a public policy scholar, it was intriguing to learn how private sector and industries thrive to achieve social impact and sustainability. As Professor Im already mentioned, we are expecting another very exciting session. Please stay tuned, and we'll come back in 15 minutes. Thank you.